I was very anxiety ridden. I was really in knots inside, and I really needed that tool. I ran 6 miles every day. I did everything I could to release anxiety because I grew up with an incredible amount of anxiety tied up inside of me. And I really had to focus for a while when I was younger to get rid of that, to get that out of my life.
It's amazing that at a young age you can actually understand. You knew what was happening to you, right? You knew that there's something going on that's just that I have to try and do everything I can to control it.
Oh, absolutely. I was drinking too much. I was doing drugs. I was smoking a pack a day, and I was having seizures. I had something called psychomotor epilepsy that started when I was about 14, and I'd have fits. And they did all kinds of brain scans, and they said, "You do not have epilepsy, but you have a psychological condition called long-term anxiety, and it comes from growing up in a situation of such anxiety, such tension, that your nervous system has this valve that you've developed, and it's giving you these seizures." And it was really dramatic. I mean, I once flew off my bicycle. I once fell off a roof. I would have these seizures, and so I had to do everything I could to alleviate anxiety.
Well, do you think obviously, I mean, obviously, I don't say obviously, but do you think it stemmed from maybe just upbringing and being around dysfunction at all?
Oh God, it was all about that. My father was I was a fall down drunk, and he was a mean drunk, and he was a old world, very imperious man. He was a child of immigrants. He grew up in um, Hell's Kitchen in New York. He was an entirely self-made man. He was a street kid in New York, and a really tough one. And he was born in 1910, so it was like having a grandfather. You know, he was much older, and he was very old world, old Irish, and everything had to be
Mm.
very formal. We were little, we had to call him sir, stuff like that. And the fights in our house growing up were just legendary. It was like growing up in Long Day's Journey into Night. I mean, it
Oh,
was just this Irish drunk, crazy, fighting clan. All my older siblings were fighting with my father. And my mother was very much like Mary Tyrone in Long Day's Journey. She was very passive. She was very loving, but just beaten down by this man that she'd been married to. And everyone got out of that house as soon as they could. All my older siblings, who were much older. And so by the time I got to be around 14, I was there alone. And it was insane in that house. I mean, that day, my
oh,
father was drunk every day. And my mother started drinking heavily. And I ended up moving out of that house when I was 16 and moved in with a friend's family just so I could finish high school because
and they let
you
you?
couldn't stay there. You could not live there. It was, it was, the
Toxic.
police were there all the time. It was crazy. It was crazy. It
Wow.
was
So it was screaming, it was yelling, it was physical, it was alcohol, it was everything.
everything.
My God,
It's kind of a classic, it's not that unusual.
it is. Well, hang on a second.
Unfortunately, it's not that
Well,
unusual.
look, I talk about some dysfunction that I had. People talk about their dysfunctions, but then you always hear someone else's story, and you're like, that was fine. I mean,
Yeah,
listen to
I didn't
Kevin.
know that.
I mean, Kevin really had it bad. I feel better. I don't feel better. I feel horrible for you, but I just like it. I talk about this all the time, but it is you see I'm sure you have friends or people that like, oh, I actually grew up in a normal environment. My parents didn't drink. They were kind, they were loving, they're still together. And don't you, I mean, I envy that.
Oh, I am in awe of families like that. Like, you know
Right?
who's like that? You know who's like that?
Who?
Dietrich Bader.
And you could tell.
I love that family. He and his wife and these two kids, they adore each
Oh,
other.
oh my God.
They are happy together. You go into that house and it's just functioning, loving, warm. And you sit there and you think, this really does exist. I never saw that growing up. So I love that family. They were wonderful.